As a disclaimer, I have to say the title of my vlog is a little misleading, as this business class of British Airways is nothing like the long-haul business class or even the regional business class in major Asian airlines. In terms of cabin space, it's not even comparable to the Qantas domestic flights that I took in 2022. That said, as a very disloyal flyer, this seemed to be the only way that I can enjoy business class lounge access. And at around £300 for a return flight, this is actually not that expensive. What's more, as a home of British Airways, you can expect the Heathrow Airport lounge to be very large, with all the facilities including surprise, kid zones within the lounge. What a way for parents and other passengers to have some quiet moment. The food and service are also on par with most of the business lounge that I went to in the past couple of years. That said, if you do not insist on using your laptop for prolonged hours at a secluded corner, I would suggest that you just skip this lounge and book an econ flight instead, as the Heathrow Airport has many decent restaurants, including Fortnum & Mason. Once you're on board, you'll realize that it's just econ class, or should I say front row econ class, and I was relieved to be the first batch of passengers to board the plane, because a couple of minutes later, many business class flyers on this flight had struggled to find an empty compartment for their hand-carry luggages. Watching the backlog of passengers stranded outside the aircraft while waiting for the business class passengers to put their luggage was kind of surreal to me, as this is something that I would not expect for a business class flight. But then, as my friends who frequently travel to Europe constantly want me to manage my expectation, I guess that's just typical. As I was stepping through the onboard menu, my mind was fueled to fury because I thought I'd need to pay for the meal. WTF if I actually bought tickets from a budget airline? Turns out I was wrong. They still serve meals on flights, but the meal was typical economy class standard, and since I already had my breakfast at a lounge, I only asked for a pack of shortbread and a cup of black coffee. Okay, things only go from bad to worse, and I mean this lounge in Nice. It's quite a frequent flyer these days. I will not demand any BA lounge in such a small airport, but the food this lounge served is absolutely hopeless. As you can see, there are just few cold cuts, and I'm not sure if they have been there for 1,000 years, as well as a few biscuits that can only feed a small number of guests in a conference tea break, and hence I was absolutely relieved that there is actually a Starbucks cafe. I wasn't expecting a Ben of pie and a pathetic coffee chain which saved me from Google's deficiency, especially when you kept receiving notifications from the BA app that a flight has been delayed. But I have to say, I was relieved to know that the flight actually arrived at the Nice airport, as I was told when on board that the delay was caused by a chain of events. Long story short, it was supposed to fly from Manchester to London and then to Nice. Then the Manchester flight was delayed, and once it finally arrived in London, a few staff have already passed their mandatory working hours and had to leave the plane, leaving the crew to be understaffed. That said, I have to give credit to the British Airways crew in trying to catch up with the delay. I also appreciate the fact that despite the understaffed situation, I didn't encounter any lapse of service in my whole flight back to London. All the staff on both flights are very polite and professional. As for the food in my return flight, I finally ordered this grilled whatever fish it was. Just look at this clip and you'll be the judge. Okay, it's not bad, but definitely something that I would not recommend. Overall, it'd be a bit harsh to say this business class experience a rip-off, because that's just not a typical European regional business class standard, and at £300, what do you expect? That said, when you know that an economy flight to the same city is only around £100, and given the standard of other value-added service like the lounge, I would say this would be my final regional European business class experience for the foreseeable future.